Roll for initiative, Brick Fanatics, because they are here, the LEGO Dungeons and Dragons Collectible Minifigure series. And it has to be said, I feel like with this one, the LEGO group has rolled a natural 20 because they are absolutely brilliant. The partnership between the LEGO Group and Hasbro on the Dungeons & Dragons brand started with the Red Dragon's Tail LEGO set, one which is large and very pricey, and as such not necessarily something that all Dungeons & Dragons fans can really get behind. These, on the other hand, are absolutely perfect if all you want from LEGO and Dungeons & Dragons is to make a little LEGO minifigure of your particular character. After all, the basic concept of both Dungeons & Dragons and LEGO are very similar. You can make whatever you want, whatever your imagination allows you to. With Dungeons & Dragons, there are certain rules and gameplay mechanics and different ideas and classes and characters that you can draw from in order to make your own personal story, whereas in LEGO form, there are lots of different bricks and materials that you can use in order to build whatever comes out of your brain. It's basically the same thing, just with storytelling versus little bits of plastic. Now, you can have the little bits of plastic and the storytelling together. There are 12 minifigures in total in this particular series. I feel like, and I may be wrong here, but I feel like 7 of them are going to be particularly in demand, and an additional 5 of them are going to be, maybe a little bit easier to get hold of, maybe just slightly less desirable among Dungeons & Dragons fans, not because they're bad, but simply because they don't allow for that same amount of creativity and creation of your own custom character. One of the ways in which the LEGO Group has gone a little bit extra here compared to previous series of minifigures is in really committing to that custom character creation. If we take a look at this delightful bard here, one of my favourite D&D classes, I have to say, if not my absolute favourite, you'll notice that this is a female bard. And it's been widely reported that these minifigures can be either male or female, depending on your personal preference. And the way that people had assumed that that was going to happen was that just on the other side of the face you would get the male face. But nope, this one is also female because, and this is absolutely brilliant, in the box you get spare heads. So this is the male head for this particular character. Is that not brilliant? Like we're getting, and it's not just this one. I've got 5 of them here, 5 brilliant extra heads that are in these boxes, so that if you want your character to be masculine and smiling, then you can do that. If you want your character to be masculine and angry, you can do that too. If you want a different emotion, then tough luck. But this is brilliant because you can do whatever you want with these minifigures in terms of both gender and, broadly speaking, the binary 2 moods that we generally see in LEGO minifigures, which is happy and serious. One more broad observation before we get into looking at these minifigures in detail. We've not got every single D&D character class, character race, or indeed skin tone for each of these different races here in LEGO form. And so we do still have some that are missing and some that are more represented than others. And this, I feel, is one of the big downsides of this series, is that we've committed to so many kind of one-off villain characters to go with the custom characters that you can create here, that they've taken up slots that could have been used for other different classes and races and different skin tones. And that's just a minor complaint, I suppose, with a series which is clearly very well designed and a lot of love and attention has gone into these. And I will say there's a lot of attention to detail here and a lot of fantastic, like even above and beyond the average collectible minifigure series, we've got a level of detail here that is really very impressive. It's just kind of a shame that some people will still look at these and go, oh, but it doesn't have my personal kind of character here. The other side of that, though, is the very clever decision to put all of these minifigures in gloves so that you can mix and match any of these character pieces and create your own character without needing to go through the faff of swapping out hands, which nobody ever does. Definitely the LEGO Group, we would never actually swap hands. But yeah, you don't have to bother doing that because these are going to go together fairly simply and fairly easily either way, which is just a nice observation and a nice thing for the LEGO Group to have included here. Right, with that said, let's start with the Bard because I do like the Bard. We've got some delightful printing here on the loot. We've got 4 faces, as said. I love the colour scheme here with the female Bard in particular. I think I prefer her over the male one because of that delightful blue lipstick, which just gives so much extra extra colour to this and matches the tunic as well. Wonderful printing on the back of the tunic, wonderful printing on the legs and dual moulded legs. All around a really nice Lego minifigure that I think is fantastic. This is one of my favorites of the lot. I also love the hairpiece. We've been getting a lot of elven ears recently, and so it's great to have another different piece here with a different color of hair that we don't normally get. This is going to be good for anybody who's a big fan of Lord of the Rings Lego as well, who wants to throw this into a scene. It's just fantastic. Really, no notes on this one. I love it. Moving on from one that I absolutely adore, why don't we talk about one that I think is not quite right, or that could be slightly different. We've got this Githyanki Warlock, or Gith Warlock, which, I mean, the Gith are having a moment at the moment where I feel like they've reached a level of mainstream popular culture kind of awareness that they might not necessarily have had previously, in large part thanks to Baldur's Gate 3. If you're not a video game person, Baldur's Gate 3 is based on the Forgotten Realms Dungeons and Dragons world, which is the same as these minifigures, and very prominently features a character called Lae'zel, who is a Gith, and she has been all over the marketing and the media for this game. She's the one with the nose like that. That's her. And she's everywhere, and so I think for a lot of people that's going to be in the moment, right at this moment in time, their first thought when they think Gith, and she shows some of the wider colour palette of different skin tones that you can get with these characters, because sometimes they're portrayed very yellow and sometimes they're portrayed a little bit more green. And here with the LEGO Groups one, they've gone with a very yellow colouring for this particular minifigure, which is fine, like it's not wrong from a lore perspective, but the problem is that in LEGO form, it's just standard minifigure yellow, and so you don't necessarily even notice that this is anything different or spectacular, because it just looks like in this box of otherwise fairly humanly skin-toned characters, you've got one that's just a regular minifigure. If they had gone with a slightly greener look instead, a little bit more like Lae'zel, I feel like it would have been so much more interesting and unique and different to set this apart from the vast majority of other LEGO minifigures. That's my big complaint. I think probably the thing that I'm the most annoyed about with any of these minifigures, and even in and of itself, that's not a huge problem. It's just that this one could have been slightly more interesting and slightly more unique, and instead it comes out just feeling like a standard minifigure. Either way though, we've got a cool knife, we've got an eye staff, which is very fun to have, and we've got some great shoulder pads here, which we've had these, I think, in various different sets before. They're not a unique element, but they're pretty cool. I like them. And then a unique molded hairpiece, again with lovely pointy ears, which is good for anybody who likes a scene with lots of pointy-eared characters, although again you are kind of restricted here with skin tone because it's going to be a standard minifigure yellow. Do you know, now that I think about it, I think the nose is actually very important to the Gith in general. With some characters in LEGO form, the nose is so important to the character's design that when you remove it for a LEGO minifigure, which just has the two eyes and the mouth, you lose so much of the personality and the soul of the character, and it becomes a lot more difficult to identify them. And so I feel like this might have been an instant where a little bit of just slight design kind of hinting at a nose might have been really useful for communicating what this character is actually supposed to be. But that said, difficult to say. I'm not a LEGO designer, I'm not a LEGO graphic designer, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Next up, we've got this brilliant Aarakocra Ranger, complete with a little dog companion character. I love this. The Aarakocra are probably one of my favourite D&D races simply because they look so cool, because they're big giant bird people. Got a lot of play, of course, in the Dungeons & Dragons film with Chris Pine last year. Just brilliant to see that in LEGO form. Oh, lovely, gorgeous wings on this one. I do think that they're spectacular. With this one, you don't get a separate second head. You've just got the one head. So as long as you're happy with a slightly stern-looking Birdman, then this is going to be absolutely brilliant. Making use of this molded leg design, leg element that we've had in a few different of these collectible minifigures now, and just like, I think of these as kind of the harpy legs because we had them in the harpy recently. I think they're great and really put to good use here. All around solid minifigure. Here's one that I think is just a joy to behold. We've got the Halfling Druid. Halflings being basically hobbits, and druids being basically just connected to nature and often shown growing, for example, horns or antlers out of their heads in order to convey their connection to the natural world. I don't think that you should overlook this wonderful little bird here, which has got some printing on its forehead that you don't normally see with these bird elements, and I think it gives it so much extra personality and charm. The stick for this one, just a collection of simple kind of leafy elements, which, there's nothing wrong with it. It's also nothing spectacular because we've all seen that kind of thing before. The cloak, though, 2 colours to it. So it's brown on the underside and then dark green on the outside. And that is a very, very nice cloak, it has to be said. I also, again, like that with this one, we've got not 1, but 2 heads. The mutton chops that the male head has is just brilliant. Just gives it a lot of that funky charm. I really enjoy this one. And then the female one, just a little bit spicy there with a kind of a winking expression in addition to the grumpy face, which is just great as well. Moving on, Dragonborn Paladin. Oh, this is a good one too. Like, seriously, these are all great. So the Dragonborn, just to bear in mind that the head piece, we've had this dragon before, and it indeed came with the Red Dragon's Tail set as well. I believe this element debuted with video back in the day, so it's good to see some of the things from video getting some other use. I'm trying desperately. There we go. The horns come off on the back. Now this is all in gold, whereas some of these elements in the past have been red with black horns, but these horns go on the back and they are seamless. You can't really tell that they're a separate pair of elements at all. They just look fantastic. What I also really love about this one is all of the cool armor. So I've got really big, chunky, nice pieces of armor here. If you see that, that's just, oh, it's great. Really, really nice. I can see a lot of other potential uses for the armor here. Once you take away that dragon head, this could be anything, and you could stick any LEGO minifigure head on there you want, and it could be any kind of character. So this one, I feel like, is going to have a lot of different potential uses for various different castle enthusiasts, as well as people who are into D&D. I like this dwarf. This is a good dwarf. This is a barbarian dwarf. Some people might say that that's not a combination that you get very regularly. I think it reminds me a lot of a character from Scott Kurt's Table Titans webcomic series about Dungeons and Dragons, where there's a character in there, Val, who plays a dwarf barbarian, as long as I'm remembering that correctly, because I think she also spent some time playing a bard. I might be wrong about that, but the vibe of this character, I love the idea of like a stocky, short, just really angry barbarian character who's just always spoiling for a fight. So that's a great combo, I think, personally. New axe piece. The beard approach has been interesting here. So we've got the kind of what I think of as the vulture hood, which the element was used for the vulture in some Spider-Man sets back in the day, which is an excellent inclusion here, but it does limit the amount with you can give it a big old beard. So this is a dwarf who has got a very finely cropped beard, perhaps something like Keeley from the Hobbit films, and then a man bun on the top in order to be able to clear that crested fluffiness on the top there, which is fine if it's a female character because it's just a hair up in a bun, and it's kind of fun, I think. Quite a funny design to have on a male one in this case. Again, you've got the 2 heads here, you've got a choice. Another wonderful little charming extra detail here is I love the little gap in the teeth for the male minifigure in particular. It's just cute and just speaks to a character that's been having some rough play a little bit more often, and perhaps a little bit more dangerously than he should have. Now, that's not the case on the female minifigure, who instead has a scar across her eyebrow. So it's just wonderful little details here to make these ones feel just a little bit more rugged and a little bit more like they've been in some combat, which is great. Not how I normally play role-playing games, I have to say. Like, my personal approach is significantly more bard related. Like, Like you whack all of your points into charisma, you get that persuade skill just as high as you can possibly get it, and then you annoy the game master as much as possible by just avoiding combat and asking loads of questions to learn everything about the game and everything about all of the NPCs. It's an approach that works for some game masters and not for others, because some people just get very annoyed with that particular gameplay style. Yeah, so I have a hard time finding somebody that wants to actually run a game for me sometimes. The last of these more customizable characters from the minifigure series is this delightful tiefling warlock, complete with little dragon friend. Just great all around. I love the colouring for this one. I love the bright contrast between that orange and that purple. If there's one thing that maybe doesn't work on this particular minifigure, it's the fact that the tail, which excellent inclusion by the way, creates just a little orange band here, which looks a little bit like the character's got a midriff showing off, and that's fine for the female face, but when you put the male face on, suddenly the male minifigure is also showing off a little bit of midriff. And hey, maybe that's the look you're going for from your male tiefling, but maybe it's not, and you don't really have a choice in the matter. So this guy has got a little bit of his belly showing. Either he needs to get a slightly larger top, or he's just into that very cool 80s fashion, very Bill and Ted. Right, that's all of the minifigures in this series that are based on kind of the broad character creation options available in Dungeons and Dragons. The remaining 5 are other characters that you might come across within a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Some of the more iconic and recognizable villains from across all of the Forgotten Realms lore. Let's start with, I think, the one with the strongest name appeal, the Mind Flayer, made famous by Stranger Things in particular, because it was the name of one of the big bads in that, where they take the names from various Dungeons and Dragons characters and just apply them to whatever weird stuff is going on in the Netflix show. This is great. Like, it's a shame that these minifigures can't be quite as widely mix and matched in the same way as some of the other custom character kind of minifigures here, but I do still really like this. I love this solid custom element here, and I love the little brain dog that comes with them. Just, oh, lovely. Strahd von Zarovich is a really nice one too. This one, I feel like, perhaps more so than a lot of the other villainous characters here, has uses outside of Dungeons. I mean, you can have like a Cthulhu style thing using the Mind Flayer, obviously, but in this case, this is also a fairly generic vampire by design, so you can use this in other circumstances, and that's fine. You've got a little rat with glowing red eyes, which I really like. You've got a wonderful little cloak piece. You've got a nice sword, but otherwise I really like the printing and the design on Strahd himself. He's just got a lot of charm and looks like a really solid monster to be thrown into any monstrous scene. So hopefully this one will find some uses outside of Dungeons and Dragons in a way that some of these minifigures might not. Zaztam, I feel, again, is just generic enough that maybe it could be used as part of a generic zombie minifigure. I really like the printing and the design and the colouring on this is very, very nice. Like, I love that shade of beige, kind of tan colour being used for kind of a rotted, corpsey looking kind of minifigure here, kind of a weathered or an exposed and stained skeletal design, which makes this really neat. But really the best thing about this, as far as I'm concerned, is the trans red skull there with the classic Lego skeleton face, which I'm always happy when I see this classic design, because the classic Lego skeleton is one of my very favourite things from all of Lego, and it's wonderful to have it in such a bright and a funky translucent shade here, so I really enjoy that. This one here, Tasha the Witch Queen, also Natasha the Dark, is one of my least favourite of these for several reasons. I mean, the printing is nice, and the design, the graphic design is very, very nice on this. I like her kind of, she's got printed arm pieces with little buckles on the side, which is very cool. The hair piece bothers me because it's just a little bit too cute, in my opinion. This is a recoloring of the same element that was used for the Thora Birch minifigure in the Hocus Pocus Lego set, and so was designed to be on a very cute little girl who's got lots of cute little ringlets and is dressed in an outfit that is supposed to be just a little bit adorable. And so when you slap it on a character that is absolutely not supposed to be a little bit adorable, she still feels very cute, especially in the way that the kind of the hair frames her face. So I don't love that. I don't feel like it's a great version of Natasha the Dark. I also really dislike, they've got a little potion pot that comes here on the side, and it's got a little translucent purpley pinky flame sticking out of it. But because it's not got anything to stick to, I've already lost one of these, and thankfully there was a spare in the box, but it doesn't stay in, and I keep looking down and being like, oh, where'd the fire go? Like, it's hard to keep the fire lit in this particular cauldron, and that's a shame. Like, I think I need to put I need to put it on a stud so that I can then keep it in there a little bit more securely so it doesn't just keep rattling out whenever I turn my back. Finally, we have the Lady of Pain, and I have to say, not that any of these minifigures feel like they're particularly cheap, but I do feel like this one has had a little bit of an extra share of the budget. Not only has she got this gorgeous cape piece and an additional element to stand on in order for her to levitate, but you've also got this new molded headpiece, which if you take that off, it's just a standard black minifigure head underneath. So this is not a piece in and of itself, it's not an element that will stand by itself. It is instead something that goes on the top and just looks fantastic. I think of all of these, this is one of the more eye-catching and one of the more clearly, very specifically Dungeons and Dragons of all of these minifigures. And so where with some of these villain characters, I feel like, oh, must they necessarily need to be here? Couldn't we have an additional slot for extra customizable minifigures instead? I do understand the importance of having this one, if only from a branding perspective, because she is such an iconic character design within the specific world of the Forgotten Realms of Dungeons and Dragons, and you see this and you think D&D in a way that with some of these you don't necessarily immediately think, ah, that's definitely LEGO D&D. As if to really hammer that home, in lieu of any other additional accessories, she's got a cubic gate, which is made out of two trans elements stacked on top of each other. One of them's got the printing on the front, and it's one of those iconic logos that you just see that, and again, this is Dungeons and Dragons. And even for somebody like myself who is a little bit of a lay fan of Dungeons and Dragons, like I'm not like super duper into it, which you may have been able to tell from this video, I still recognize this as being specifically iconically D&D. All of that being the case, I reckon that this is a very strong series of collectible minifigures. They have gone above and beyond here, both the LEGO Group and Hasbro, in making a selection of minifigures that just sparkle with a little bit of extra charm. And hopefully this will be really useful for anybody who is really into D&D and wants to make their own customizable character, or for anybody who just wants to have a selection of new fantasy characters to add to whatever castle scene that they may have on display in their home, because there's a lot of stuff here that can be used outside of the D&D framework, which is ultimately kind of the point of D&D. Now, it is a shame that we've not yet got additional LEGO sets with additional bricks that can be put together to make extra things for a D&D player that may want to bring LEGO into their games, for example, little bits of terrain or something like that, without it being the massive set like the Red Dragon's Tail. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get some of that in years to come, because I do feel like there's a market for that. But in the meantime, having minifigures available with D&D branding and with the D&D designs means that a lot of people are going to be served here by the opportunity to start creating their own characters. And I do feel like that's the big benefit that we're going to get from these minifigures as opposed to other collectible minifigure series that we've had in the past. Now, one last thing before I wrap this video up, we've got an entire second set of these here, which are currently unopened, and this is great. These minifigures have that delightful dot matrix code on there, which means that they can be scanned by the Brick Search app. And so what we're going to do in the near future is to open and unbox all of these minifigures in one go and give you a nice good look at what is inside each of the boxes and all of the extra little things that you're going to find in there, and hopefully a nice slightly closer look at some of the printing and the designs of some of these elements. If you are interested in that, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be the first to know when that video goes live. In the meantime, if you plan on buying any LEGO from the LEGO website in the near future, you can use the QR code, which is currently on screen, or the affiliate link, which is down in the description. Doing so takes you straight to the LEGO website, and it doesn't cost you an extra penny, but when you go through that link, it helps to support Brick Fanatics and support the work that we do with a lot of these videos. With all of that said, there is nothing else to do at this point but beg you to please go down into the comments and leave us your thoughts on the new collectible minifigures and which ones you're going to be picking up, and make sure that you give this video a thumbs up because it genuinely does help out the channel. Thank you very much for watching.